Hello, hello, I'm Abby Martin, and this is Breaking the Set. Well, guys, it looks like we've survived the storm. The shutdown is officially over. Let's take a look at some of the top highlights.
I do not like that, Sam I Am. Do you like green eggs and ham? I do not like them, Sam I Am.
The shutdown of the government will have a negligible effect. This is a slice of the government. It only involves the non-essentials. It will have practically zero effect if you look at all the shutdowns in the past.
The cast of Deadliest Catch and other Alaska crab fishers can't open their season as planned on Tuesday because the government hasn't set crab quotas.
To put the Quran down, to get up off his knees, and to figuratively come up with his hands out, up.
Everything from Ted Cruz's rendition of Dr. Seuss to a Tea Party loyalist demanding that Obama put down his Quran. Yes, it's been a long 16 days, but now people can rejoice. Government workers are defurloughed, and we're even greeted by Uncle Biden with donuts. How adorable. So what did the sham of the government shutdown actually accomplish? Oh, wait, nothing. And guess what? We're going to go through this whole damn charade all over again in just 3 months. Not to mention how this circus cost taxpayers a whopping $24 billion, according to the S&P, and the lives of 4 minors. But I guess sacrifices have to be made to manufacture outrage and sufficiently divert attention from everything else going on in the world. And now it's time for an update on my favorite bloated government agency created in the wake of 9/11, the TSA, which of course stands for Trained Sexual Assaulters. And I don't say that lightly. See, according to an investigation released last week by the Arizona Republic, 26 complaints were filed against the TSA at the Phoenix International Airport in 2012 on behalf of the disabled. This may not sound like many, but actually that number is more than double the national average. But it's not just the high number of complaints that stood out in the report. It's the egregious methods that TSA officers employed to search these people. Take the case of a breast cancer survivor who alleges that Phoenix TSA agents refused to pat down her prosthetic breast in private. In the complaint, the unidentified woman wrote, "She made me pull it out in front of the world. When I got upset, I was told to shut up. I've never been so humiliated in my life. The TSA has ruined my vacation." But you know, ruining vacations seems to be the TSA's favorite pastime, especially for breast cancer survivors. See, agents forced another woman to take out her prosthetic breast for inspection. But this time, it was an 82-year-old lady in a wheelchair. Her grandchild wrote in a complaint, "At her age and physical capability, she posed absolutely no risk whatsoever to anyone's safety. It should never have been subject to such invasive and undignified treatment. This sort of degrading treatment is more appropriate for prisoners." Actually, I don't think prisoners deserve to be sexually assaulted either. But let's get back to the TSA's obsession with prosthetic body parts. The Arizona Republic began its investigation after a paraplegic Marine claimed he was forced to remove his prosthetic legs. He says the TSA checked his wheelchair for explosives and then made him reattach his legs and walk through the body scanner, which he was physically unable to do. Conveniently, the video released from the TSA only shows the before and after scenes of the inspection, claiming that no video exists of the alleged incident. Isn't it interesting how Big Brother turns a blind eye when it's most opportune? But unsurprisingly, though, these incidents aren't unique to Phoenix. Between 2009 and 2012, the TSA received 920 complaints just from disabled travelers, according to the Government Accountability Office. Again, that's only disabled travelers. Overall, TSA misconduct's on the rise. Over the last 3 years, TSA investigated over 9,000 impropriety cases, and during that time, misconduct filings actually increased by 26%. That means that just last year, 1 in 16 TSA officers were investigated for misconduct. But is this really a shock, considering that a 2012 investigation by Congresswoman Marsha Blackburn revealed that because of lax hiring policies, the agency has employed everyone from child pornographers to amateur thieves? So, as we joke around about changing the name of the TSA to thousands standing around while they touch some ass, let's not forget the real issue at hand, guys. While the agency picks on the weakest members of society to justify its authority, the rest of us remain obligatory actors in their game of security theater. Good news, everyone! NSA Director Keith Alexander's on his way out. Yep, the NSA chief has formalized plans to step down by spring of next year. Couldn't have anything to do with the ongoing stream of damning revelations about the U.S. government's global voyeurism, right? No, that would be admitting fault, and we all know how much the NSA isn't exactly a fan of accountability. But aside from news of Alexander's retirement, the latest NSA revelation to hit the internets details how much CIA drone strikes depend on intelligence gathered by the NSA. Now, I know it seems like there's a brand new NSA revelation every week, but consider this. The journalist who published the initial documents, Glenn Greenwald, just announced that some of the most shocking and significant leaks have yet to be exposed. So to help me break down the latest on this ongoing scandal and the failure of the U.S. political system as a whole, I'm joined by my good friend, David Seaman, journalist and host of the David Seaman Hour. Awesome to have you on, David.
It's awesome to be here, Abby. It's a couple thousand miles between friends.
Yes, exactly. David, what are your thoughts on the confirmation that the CIA relies so heavily on the NSA for drone strikes?
Well, I think it's terrifying. The Washington Post story that came out yesterday shows that the CIA collaborates with the NSA, and on the basis of sending doing something like sending an email to a certain targeted individual, you yourself can be targeted for a drone strike in some of these countries. Of course, that's not yet happening in the United States, but it leaves the door wide open, and even if that doesn't happen, these people in other countries are still, well, people.
Right. I mean, we don't know who these people are. They've never been given a fair trial. David, let's talk about another recent NSA leak that the agency actually harvests hundreds of millions of contact lists from personal emails and instant messenger accounts. It's clearly beyond just metadata now. Why are there no consequences for these continuous lies from NSA officials?
Well, General Alexander is, as you said, announcing his retirement from the agency. You know, after all those tours of duty, that combat zone of checking people's Facebook likes and their Yahoo address books, you can understand why he wants some downtime. It's pretty ridiculous because what they initially told us at first, back in March, James Clapper, the Director of National Intelligence, told Congress that they're not collecting any data at all on U.S. citizens. Clearly a lie, perjured himself before Congress, should be in jail based on our existing laws, but of course nothing has happened to him because he's too powerful. And so that was back in March, not collecting any data at all on U.S. citizens. And then we have, yeah, we're collecting data, but it's only the metadata. Don't worry about it, guys. Go back to doing whatever you're doing before. Kim Kardashian and Kanye West are together. Just go focus on that stuff. And then it comes out that, oh, they're actually harvesting hundreds of thousands, in a single day, hundreds of thousands of people's address book contacts, people who have no connection to terrorism or crime, and by the way, people who are U.S. citizens. So we have a situation where the U.S. government is taking our taxpayer money and then turning around and using that money to spy on us in our own country. It's unheard of, and it's also kind of unheard of that you broke a story when you interviewed NSA whistleblower Russ Tice. There's this strong possibility that the NSA targeted President Obama in the beginning of summer 2004. Why hasn't Obama looked into this? What other world leader, if told that his own intelligence agency was spying on him years before he even ran for the presidency, what other world leader would be totally okay with that?
Yeah, and think about this, David. I was also thinking about this. You know, this report's coming off the heels of finding out that the NSA is also spying on multiple other countries, including Brazil. I mean, at least in the U.S., we technically have constitutional protection. Can you imagine being a citizen of Brazil with no legal safeguards? I mean, it's just amazing.
Yeah, information is power, and clearly the United States wants the information and it wants that power. Between industrial espionage, political blackmail, the uses for this stuff is almost endless, and it doesn't have to be used today. It can be stored for a time in the future when it becomes politically useful.
And let's talk about Glenn Greenwald, the journalist who broke the leaks, leaving The Guardian to start this new Voyeur, $250 million backed journalistic venture founded by eBay founder Pierre Omidyar. Probably just said that wrong. Do you think we should be skeptical of a billionaire that claims to be invested in transparency and free press?
Not necessarily. If you look at how he made his money, eBay is really kind of a democratic concept, at least originally it was. And this is somebody who I think was watching what's happening and thinks that with his money and expertise, he can bring bring more to the people than what The Guardian is doing and some of these kind of journalism 1.0 outlets. So we'll see what happens. You know, my only concern is I don't want it to take away too much of Greenwald's energy from the leaks that he's already promised us, you know what I mean? So that's my only concern, is that this stuff needs to come out right away. If, as Snowden and Greenwald have been saying, the worst is yet to come, I say let's see it. We're all adults here. Let's see what this government is actually doing in our name.
Right. We don't want to wait till he builds the network, gets everyone on board, and then releases them. It's like, let's get him out now and then work on this big media empire, which is great. I agree with you. It is kind of a sad commentary about the state of media in the U.S. that we need to rely on, you know, billionaire funding or for these ventures in order to have journalistic freedom. David, you brought up a really interesting point to me in the past, which is that the burden of proof in the wake of these leaks is always on the media that's covering it. Why do you want to cover this? What's your profit motive? Why isn't the burden of proof on the government for committing these crimes, David?
That is exactly my question. It's always, well, Glenn Greenwald, he's a limited government guy. Or Abby Martin, she works at Russia Today. And it's never, well, the facts have not been disputed. This is what the NSA is doing with our taxpayer money. So let's turn that mirror around and let's ask, hey, government, why are you doing this? If you guys have nothing to hide, you should have nothing to fear. And President Obama's actions have been in complete contrast and violation of every single page of the Audacity of Hope and almost everything he said in 07 and 08 on the campaign trail. So now a fire has been lit under anybody who still considers themselves to be a real journalist and not just a well-paid hack at a network like MSNBC or CNN. And those people out there, people like Greenwald, people like you, they are more motivated than ever to uncover every single stone and rock out there and see what this administration is doing. And it's not only Obama, because, you know, after Obama retires and it's somebody else in the White House, a lot of these programs and agencies will still exist unless we show the American people what is going on, and unless the American people, in turn, demand change and reform of these programs.
You're right, David, and I think that's why I'm so open about how I feel, and the same with you, is that it's time to stop tiptoeing around these issues that we know are criminal, unconstitutional, and unlawful. So I'm not going to appear to be unbiased about an issue that I know is blatantly wrong, and I think it's time to stop really tiptoeing around these things. David, I wanted to bring your attention to this poll. It's a historic new poll that came out last week that showed 60% of Americans think third-party representation is needed in Congress. Is this a sign of real will among people for change? Is it merely a snapshot in time of sentiment towards the current dysfunction? What do you think?
The public has a short attention span, but clearly, if anything has been proven by this shutdown, it's that our existing system does not work. We threatened the entire planet's financial system over a, you know, mostly televised dispute between Democrats and Republicans. Unacceptable. Clearly, people want something better, and I refuse to believe that people like Dianne Feinstein on the left, a senator whose recent op-ed in the Wall Street Journal read like something the chancellor from V for Vendetta would say, that, you know, some kind of authoritarian fascist like that. And on the right, Senator Lindsey Graham, who sounds almost identical to her in his narratives and rhetoric. I refuse to believe that those are the best people out there able to represent us and able to run our country.
I couldn't agree more, and I think a lot of Americans agree with you. David, everyone check it out. David Seaman, host of the David Seaman Hour. Great podcast. Thanks so much for coming on, man.
Thank you.
Fight the power. These immortal words not only revolutionized music, but helped start a movement. In 1982, Public Enemy was formed. It was a hip-hop group that dared to challenge preconceived notions about how music should be delivered to the world. This form of hip-hop inspired a generation of free thinkers to confront authority and question the establishment. One of its members, Professor Griff, also known as the Minister of Information, is still fighting the power today. He joined me earlier to talk about the evolution of hip-hop and the true political power structure of this country. I first asked him about his thoughts on the dysfunctional government shutdown.
I think it's jockeying for power that's not their own, that doesn't even exist. I think we need to keep in mind that that the United States government is a corporation, and the corporation needs to be run by a president, a vice president, and the board. And I think that's what's going on. I don't think the people on Capitol Hill have our best interests at heart.
Well, I couldn't
They
agree
don't.
with you more there, Griff. Let's talk about Public Enemy. You were one of the early members of the group, which covered previously taboo topics in music such as class consciousness, race issues. What was it like to be at the forefront of such a revolutionary musical art form?
Very exciting, very challenging, to say the least. And then when you're kind of young, kind of growing into it and accepting everything, according to our mission, which was only a 2-year mission, it was very critical. I think more challenging than critical, because we were interacting with people that we kind of like never had a clue or an idea that we'd be interacting with. You're talking about, 6 brothers from the hood in Long Island, New York, and taking on issues that ultimately will impact the human family throughout the globe. So it was very, very challenging. But, we kind of got through it to walk across the stage and receive the accolades from our peers as far as being in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So it was a beautiful thing.
That is amazing.
It was worth it.
That is amazing. I mean, speaking for a whole generation there, and there's so many prominent hip-hop artists today, like Jay-Z, that are actively lobbying for Obama. Why do you think so many rap artists have stopped fighting the establishment and have instead actively joined it?
I think they try to get along, to kind of go along, just to kind of get along. They don't want to cause any waves, so to speak, simply because I think they really feel that it'll affect their paycheck. Deeper than that, I think there's a fear there of going and having to go back and live the way the majority of us live. Not to say that we're in a terrible, destitute kind of situation, but they don't want to go back to live and have the daily, day-to-day grind that you and I may have. Then, on top of that, they don't want to confront the powers that be. They don't want to speak truth to power. And I think they're comfortable where they are, with some degree of having this illusion of having some degree of power, which you and I both know that's no power at all.
Do you think that it's just self-censorship, or do you think that there are certain factors behind the corporatization of the industry and the whitewashing of hip-hop's original message?
I always say that we are held with the duty and responsibility, regardless of what your complexion is, to keep the integrity there in hip-hop, to keep the integrity in music, and bring it back to its cultural roots and live by those elements that the founding fathers of hip-hop laid out. And I think it's a beautiful thing once we can recognize and understand this. But in order for them to be successful, a certain amount of entertainers have to be on the left. A certain amount of entertainers have to be on the right. This middle ground, those of us that want to keep the cultural integrity in hip-hop, we tend to, we're looked at as though we're the rabble-rousers because we bring up issues. Well, if you go back in history and you look at any genre and popular genre of music, when it began bubbling up, it was always about these particular, taking on these particular themes and presenting it in the music. I don't care if it's poetry, jazz, punk rock, rock in some cases, especially with the James Browns of the world, and definitely with the Public Enemies of the world. We always brought up these kind of issues to be talked about via the music. There's social commentary outside of the context of the CD or your album.
Right, and of course there are tons of hip-hop artists that are very revolutionary to the roots, to the core, still in the world today, but of course what's pushing the mainstream is that dumbed down, advertising to people, kind of that diluted message. And even just talking about the quality of music in the mainstream, how do you feel when you watch something like the VMAs and see that the most popular artists presented are Robin Thicke and Miley Cyrus, represented as the voice of our generation for music?
Yeah, when I see that, red lights are going off in my head. Like, if that is the standard now, then from that reference point, where do you go?
Right, exactly. I mean, to me, there's so much.
You understand what I'm saying? But deeper than that, how about all of those that have sacrificed their lives to see that culturally, artistically, we got to this point, to the point where we're respected and we're heard. I would like to be sitting here with Bono from U2 and Chuck D on this side to ask him that same question. Like, where are we going if that's the standard and that's the reference point from which we have to pass back to the next generation coming behind us? This is a sad state of affairs, man.
It really is, man. I mean, you just hit it right on the head there. It's a very sad commentary that's what should be looked up to, I guess, when really it's just horrible music. Let's move on to your stint in the Army. I heard you talking about it. It was really interesting. You said that you enlisted because you didn't have a choice. Talk about what influenced that decision and why the events in Vietnam didn't deter you from signing up.
There's not too many options. You can either take to the streets and sling dub sacks. I'm too short and too light in the ass to play football or sports. I'm too short to be a basketball player. What other options? I could have taken the academic route, but Mom had 12 other children. I said to myself, okay, I like discipline, law, and order. I don't mind being disciplined. I don't mind the discipline. So I went into the military and went up under this program to become a military police because I ultimately wanted to get into Child Protective Service. Got out of the military and even went to a PSTI in Atlanta to take this post-certification training to become a police officer to get into Child Protective Service because the children was the thing I had in my mind, and that was my focus, to protect the children.
And what was your experience like in the military that kind of changed your opinion about it?
Absolutely terrible. I was supposed to do a 3-year stretch. I did probably about a year and a half and got out because I was taking vaccinations, which I'm staunchly opposed to. Taking orders from people I didn't respect. And not only that, after studying the domestic policy, which is, the foreign policy, which is the extension of the domestic policy, I just said to myself, I got to find a way to get out.
And Griff, speaking of foreign policy, as a member of the Nation of Islam, how do you feel about the Islamophobia being bred here at home and the war on terror being waged abroad?
Whew, it's critical. And those that are watching that are in the Nation of Islam, it says, okay, well, Professor Griff hasn't been active in the Nation of Islam for a while, so we kind of need to make a side note. Islamophobia is very critical because even in my lecture that I give in dealing with the psychological covert war on hip-hop, dealing with this whole psychological war, in most cases I put up pictures of Muslim women and the way they're dressed next to Christian women and the way they're dressed or supposed to be dressed, and it's the same. A lot of the things in 3 major religions are common. They're very common, but the media, multi-ethnic destruction in America, the media will exacerbate the tensions to get us to move one way or the other. It depends on the hidden agenda. And I think it's very unfair simply because we tend to look at people that we probably have more in common with than we would ever know if we left it up to the media.
Absolutely. The establishment has to demonize the enemy in order to keep those wars churning, Griff. We have about a minute left, and I just wanted to sum it up by asking you, how can we collectively galvanize the youth? I mean, the youth seems so consumed with escapism, turned off by the inundation of information and the dog and pony show of our political establishment. How can we generate the youth to really fight back and stand up?
Starting with you and I in this conversation right now, we have to dare to be different and dare to tell the truth. And we have to bring other people around us to that particular reference point. And then we need to take it from there and empower young people with education and information. This is why I'm the Minister of Information. I think once you tell young people and you be straight up with young people and real with young people will gravitate towards it. And I think it's our duty and responsibility. Revolution is not an event. It's a process, and we need to understand that, and we need to continue to speak truth to power in everywhere we find young people, wherever they are, whatever medium we need to use, by any, every, and all means necessary.
Thank you for speaking that truth to power. Professor Griff, Minister of Information, public enemy. Amazing to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Oh, give thanks. Thank you very much.
Thanks to everyone at home for tuning in tonight. Make sure to join me all over again tomorrow to Break the Set.